You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
So you waited in line forever to see the infinity rooms, and they were about the size of a coat closet. And then once you got in, you had 30 seconds in each infinity room, which was so sad. And there was like no recording that warns you. It was just like, open the door and you're out.
So you get to experience infinity and the never ending for 30 seconds or less.
Which was so, like, it was the most calming experience, like, to be in the actual infinity room and seeing it, and experiencing it. However, like, getting to it was stressful and a half, because of the lines and stuff. But
see to me, just that many dots and reflections sounds like a nightmare. I mean, like, I've seen the pictures and stuff. It looks cool and stuff. Just for me, like, infinite is a nightmare. The other thing is, like, I'm all for, like, artists being a little bit pretentious. I don't know if you know this. I'm a little bit pretentious myself. But, like, she refers to it as, like, infinity net. Like, even I have to call a timeout at a certain point and just be like, it's polka dots.
So do you know why she is so obsessed with dots?
I do know why.
Okay.
I do know why.
Just making sure.
And I know why I'm a monster for saying that. But
I feel like who art Ed?
Try to spice it.
Who art it? Mr. Wood art Ed me.
Yeah. Either way, it's ambiguous. It works on so many levels.
I know.
That's off to a great start.
welcome to Who Arted, where we explore visual arts in an audio medium. I'm your host, Kyle Wood, and with me today is Emily Fiedler, the art teacher at Elmwood Elementary. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here.
So today we are talking about Yayoi Kusama, the contemporary Japanese artist. And we're going to start off with just a little bit of background. I know you've seen her work. Do you know much about her background?
Yes. The exhibit was organized kind of like historically so that you started at her early work and then saw more current as you went through.
She was born in Matsumoto, Japan, and she moved to New York in 1957. And she studied art in Japan, but it was very traditional from what I understand. And she really sort of hit her stride when she came to New York, and it was a little bit more freeing.
Yes, and she was actually inspired by Georgia O'Keeffe to come over to America. She saw her work and wrote to her, and Georgia O'Keeffe actually followed up. They were kind of pen pals.
Yeah, Georgia O'Keeffe was awesome. Georgia O'Keeffe, if you need another reason to love O'Keeffe,
I know.
She not only was encouraging in the correspondence. From what I understand, she gave her business advice, and even when Kusama was on hard times financially because of hospitalizations and stuff like that, O'Keeffe had her art dealer buy a number of pieces from Kusama.
Oh, I had no idea about that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I know. Just another awesome thing about O'Keeffe. So Kusama came over, and it seems like from everything I've read, it seems like she was making contacts and a savvy business person and getting herself into the art world right away. She was not only was she corresponding with O'Keeffe, but I think was it Donald Judd maybe?
Yeah.
Was an early supporter of her work and things like that. And she her work was largely associated with a little bit of pop, but also minimalism, and there's a psychedelic element to it as well. It's kind of an interesting fusion of things that were happening in the mid to late 20th century. So it really sort of hit at just the right time when sort of the hippie movement was happening and the counterculture feminism, and her work has a lot of that sort of critique, and she aligned herself with a lot of those social movements.
Yeah, politically involved, and additionally with the pop artist movement, she was friends and foes with Warhol too, and they kind of worked together at a point, but then he ripped off one of her repeating wallpapers, the cows.
Of course he did.
Yeah, so
of course he
they
did.
are no longer friends at that point, which is sad. But
I don't know. I mean, if you're friends with O'Keeffe and you get Warhol out of your life, it seems like she's coming out ahead on that one.
Yeah, I guess. I would choose O'Keeffe over Warhol any day.
Oh, certainly. Now, one of her most famous things is what she refers to as her infinity nets, the dots that are the recurring motif. And from what I understand, that even goes back to her childhood. She grew up, her family had a nursery growing like plants and things like that. And the way I understood it was the repetition of dots sort of started with visualizing like cells and things like that, plant cells. And we just see it everywhere. And it is her way of sort of making sense of infinity, as well as handling her mental health struggles and things like that, because she did not have the best childhood. I hate to dwell on the problems, but I think it is worth mentioning that, she did have a very difficult childhood growing up. Her mother was very, very strict, and, not only strict in expecting her to be more traditional in terms of the culture, but it was an abusive situation that she thankfully got out of. I always like to think about this not because of the horrible things that happened in her life, and see her just as a victim, but like she's resilient. She is strong. She broke away from that. She got away from a horrible and difficult situation, and she found multiple ways of overcoming that and transcending it. Not just with the therapeutic aspects of her art, but, she also sought medical treatment when necessary, to move beyond those things that were so difficult early in her life. And she still struggles with and is moving past the long-term effects that has.
She constantly wanted to escape, though, throughout that childhood, and she grew up on the nursery, like you said, and she wanted to know what was beyond the mountains and within the mountains. So her goal of getting out was always within her mind. That sounded terrible. It was not a complete thought.
It's totally true though. Like getting out was on her mind, as rightfully it should have been. And in some ways, art was an escape. It was also her means of getting out, mm-hmm. like not just sort of dissociating and escaping mentally, but like physically getting out. She moved from Japan to New York. One of the things I want to pick up on, though, there that I heard you say that I thought was really, really interesting and goes to the heart of this, was you talked about her wanting to see what's beyond the mountains and in the mountains. And I feel like there's this inside and outside characteristic to her work, where she's exploring a little bit of like cells and underlying structures that make things up, but also the infinite and what is far beyond, with her reflections and the infinity rooms and things like that.
Yeah, so within her exhibition, there were a couple video clips that she created, and it was everything is a dot. And just that thought for me, thinking about it artistically and just generally, is overwhelming, to the point that it makes me rethink the world. And I think that's what makes her such an amazing artist, is because of how literally she has thought the world to the point of a cell, and then the vast universe of dots beyond us. So, and that goes back to her studying the plants and within the nursery, and from cells to seeds to small plants, and then their full-grown potential.
I see that, and I get what you're saying. It's funny to me though, like that's exactly why I cannot stand like like for me, and this is, I guess, revealing of me personally, like one of my earliest like memories of childhood was like nightmares of like just infinite, and like trying to wrap my head around it. Like you talked about how it's like just that mind-blowing aspect of it, and it's like, and to me it feels just overwhelming and like horrifying. It is like the stuff of my nightmares to be like just looking out into the abyss, and seeing that infinite reflection of dots and stuff like that.
I totally understand. I guess the way that she has conveyed it within the infinity rooms and using light makes it a lot more comforting to me when I see it, and almost like a more elegant version of infinity in a way.
Yeah, I could see what you mean there. And I guess at this point, it might be sort of a natural time for us to shift over towards like talking about one specific piece and looking at, the infinity rooms. I feel like are just such a popular thing right now. Not just because they look great on Instagram, but because it is this overwhelming immersive experience that you and I obviously have different reactions to. But specifically, I'm looking at Love is Calling from 2013, which is one of her infinity rooms. And, to describe what an infinity room is, I think we have to start with just like literally what's in there. It is a mirrored room so that on every wall you're seeing reflections and, reflection of a reflection of a reflection. So it appears to go on forever. And inside of that room, she has her artwork. In this case, it is like neon soft sculptures illuminated with her characteristic infinity nets, known to the rest of us as polka dots. And I guess I'll let you go first. What do you want to say? What are you seeing in the piece?
I guess when I'm comparing this to her other infinity rooms that are less colorful, I'm seeing an extreme fantasy here. This is the stuff of my childhood dreams and nightmares, where it is very almost Alice in Wonderland-like and has a lot more whimsy to it because of these colors associated with it, and these soft shapes. They almost look like it reminds me of octopus tentacles, like at first glance. And I think if a kindergartner was looking at this, they would also think the same thing. They wouldn't go to the deep meaning of infinity and what these soft sculptures could mean in terms of like her childhood and her life and the stories she's attempting to tell through this.
Yeah, the tentacles, I definitely get that sense because it does feel like tentacles because they're sort of cylindrical, but they're organic and twisting forms, right? And so they're coming up from the floor and down from the ceiling, and it does have that feel of like an octopus grabbing hold of the room or, alien creatures or something like that. The polka dots are all over the place, and she uses light brilliantly. I believe it's actually... They're illuminated with color changing like LEDs, so it's not consistently a green or a magenta tentacle. It changes over time, and the Love is Calling one. She's really engaging all of the senses because also there is an audio loop that is playing with her reading a poem that she wrote. And it's all just sort of going on that loop, expressing, her message of love through her art and trying to create something that will just envelop the viewer. Like I think this is one of the stronger uses of installation art that I've seen where like as much as I personally would not enjoy time in this space, like it's not my thing. I think it is
short time.
Very short time because they're very popular.
Yes.
But because it is something that like other people do respond to because it is so well crafted in that idea of like just isolating you in this space and creating like a space that does, like I say, it takes over all your senses. You're seeing things, you're aware of your space, and it's surrounding you. It's that it's an immersive experience that you can't get from a painting or a video.
And I also think like the bright colors and subject matter in this room is really able to relate to a lot of different people that necessarily aren't maybe the most art literate to those that are more. So if everyone that immerses themselves within this room can take a different message.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like as a child of the 90s, I just look at this and think like, that is rad.
Yeah. It's so open to interpretation.
Yeah. And I think that is, sort of her work at its finest, where it creates these different levels for you to enjoy just the aesthetics, just the look of it, as well as like that deeper sort of meditative level where it starts to get you thinking about your place in the cosmos and meaning and structures that connect to everything. And now I just want to curl up and but yeah, I mean, that is what she's going for in these infinity rooms. Is she is trying, and that's what a good installation does. It immerses you in the art world. It puts you into another space. It transforms the world that you're stepping into. I'm wrapping it up. I want just a 3-point rating scale. And where should this hang? The Louvre? Is this something to look at? The lab? Is this something to learn from? Or the Louvre? British for the bathroom.
Yeah.
There's a poop joke in there somewhere.
Oh, that's terrible.
Where do you think this piece belongs?
I definitely don't think it's a waste. I would put it in the lab. I would give it a 2 because I think of the Louvre as very much like high art and very classical. And while I think that in history and in time, this will make a place there, I think right now artists and makers need to currently learn from this and begin to have their own spin-offs and interpretations of this new immersive way of creating installation.
That's fair enough. I mean, I think it is a strong installation. I think there is stuff to learn from, but I would actually put it in the Louvre. I would put it in the Louvre because as much as I personally do not enjoy this experience, and I don't want to think about the meaning behind it because it makes my brain hurt, I will say as a sensory experience, it is something that a lot of people would enjoy. It is very aesthetically pleasing. And I hear you saying, like, you think, the Louvre, you think of high art and all of that sort of stuff. I personally see the Louvre as I see any other visual arts museum as a place to put stuff for us to look at and enjoy. And I think the art world needs stuff that is fun to look at and enjoy. And something is not a higher art form because it is older and because it is, classical. I think her work, it is visually pleasing. It is strong. It is something that people enjoy. And, the colors on this are rad. You know what I mean? Like it's fun.
Yeah.
It is fun to look at. It's not fun for me to think about, but it is fun to look at. And that's what I feel like the museums are for, is for stuff that is fun to look at. And the Louvre could stand to be a little bit less pretentious and a little less high art and a little bit more enjoyable with things like infinity nets.
Very true. Can I change
Or
my
polka
answer to
dots.
a 2.5? Like in between, like a museum, the Met, the Museum of Modern Art, or not the
I don't even, but I don't think of
MoMA.
it as a hierarchy. Like I don't think it's one is higher than the other. Like I don't see, no, I think it's a different purpose. And that's what I'm going at. It's not so much like the rating of like, something in the Louvre is better than something that's for the lab. Like I think some art is to see and appreciate, and some art is to think about and learn from. And I don't think one purpose is better than another. Like I don't think something that just is enjoyable to look at is shallow. I think it's just enjoyable, and that can be a perfectly fine end of itself. So that's all I got.
Yeah.
That's all I got. So thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your taking the time.
Yeah, it was so. I just talking about art with another adult is a very fun way to spend my time. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. It's nice to have someone else I can nerd out with. This concludes this week's episode of Who Arted. If you found this tolerable, please like and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. You can find images of the work being discussed this week and every week in the show notes, on Twitter @WoodArtEd, and the website whoartedpodcast.com. Podcast done.